In the world of sports today, the last thing we saw is the greatest thing we've ever seen. Example, Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt are the best pass rushers of all time. Let's be clear, those guys are amazing. But it's because we're so short-sighted that this series even exists. Before Donald and Watts, there were others. In fact, there was one guy so bad that he came up with a name for hitting the quarterback.
Sacking the cornerback is just like you devastate a city, or you cream a multitude of people. I mean, it's just like you put all the offensive players in one bag, and I just take a baseball bat and beat on the bag.
I'm Steven Jackson, and in this episode of Legends, we look back at one of the greatest players of all time, offensive defense. He not only did change the game of NFL, but for black players as well. I'm talking about no other than the king of swag, the Secretary of Defense, the legend, Deacon Jones. David Deacon Jones was born December 9th, 1938, out of Eatonville, Florida. He grew up in a segregated world. When he was 12, Deacon saw white teenagers in a convertible throw a watermelon at black churchgoers leaving church. The watermelon hit an elderly lady, knocked her to the ground, splitting her head open. She died, and no one was held accountable for it. That would stick with Deacon. In fact, because of Deacon's participation in the civil rights movement, his scholarship to South Carolina State was revoked in 1958. Eventually, he played a season at Mississippi Vocational College in 1960. That year, Deacon and his black teammates had to sleep in cots in the gym of many of the teams they played against. Why? Because motels wouldn't allow them to stay there. No one had heard of Deacon Jones as the 1961 NFL draft approached. But pro scouts spotted him while watching film of one of his opponents, and they took notice. So in the 14th round, yes, the 14th round of the draft, the Los Angeles Rams took a chance on this speedy defensive tackle. And just like that, LA drafted the greatest defensive player of all time. He changed his name from David to Deacon because he wanted to have a name that stood out. And when he played angry. He played with a purpose because he felt like he was playing for something more than just himself. The defensive lineman or the defense will come across the line of scrimmage at a point where you can't even make a decision or read through your progressions. It's just gonna put hell on it. It's just gonna make hell of a day for the offense and the opponents. It sounds so simple and easy, I know, but it's one thing to say it, one thing to do it, and very few people could do what this man was doing. No one has ever seen a 6'4", 270-pound lineman with the speed and quickness of Deacon.
It's safe to say at this point in time, I was the fastest in the history of the game. From a dead standstill. My lateral movements along with my initial speed was just fantastic. I could outrun daylight.
During his time with the Rams, Deacon teamed up with Rosie Greer, Lamar Lundy, and Merle Olsen to form the Fearsome Foursome. Even today, many people still think that they're the greatest defensive line ever assembled. And Deacon was the Fearsome Foursome's greatest weapon. His play earned him the nickname, the Secretary of Defense. One of the innovations of Deacon's game was something called the head slap. It was something he picked up from watching Muhammad Ali box.
The head slap was to do two purposes. One was to give myself an initial head start on the pass rush. In other words, an extra step. Because anytime you go upside a man's head, then they have a tendency to blink their eyes or close their eyes, and that was all I needed. Gail Sears had a statement out that all he needed was 16 inches. Well, all I needed was a blink of the old eyes, and I was biting.
The NFL didn't officially track sacks until 1982, but Pro Football Weekly researched Deacon's sack total for his career, and yes, they're mind-blowing. From 1964 to 1968, he averaged 20.5 sacks per season. He had 22 sacks twice. At that time, teams only played 14 games a year. He was the NFL's sack leader for 5 out of 6 straight seasons. No other player has led the league in sacks more than twice. After 7 years with the Rams, Deacon played 2 seasons with the San Diego Chargers and 1 with the Washington Redskins. He made the Pro Bowl 8 times, All-Pro selection 5 times. And in a 196-game career, he only missed 5 games. To me, it's crazy that Deacon Jones isn't officially counted among the sack leaders of all time. He had 173.5 sacks. the most of all time when he retired, and the third most of all time today. To me, he's the greatest pass rusher to ever live, and here's why. Bruce Smith, the all-time leader, had 27 more sacks. He played for 19 seasons and 88 more games than Deacon. Reggie White, the runner-up, he had 25 more sacks. He played for 15 seasons and 41 more games. And one more thing, Deacon Jones wasn't just a football player. He was a pioneer for black athletes everywhere. As he would put it,
I came into this league in 1961. We did not have a black quarterback. We did not have a black coach. We did not have a black offensive guard. We did not have a black tight end. We did not have a lot of positions that we weren't allowed to play. I took my responsibility very seriously. My responsibility, when the door cracked, kick it in, Deacon.
Deacon Jones, a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest to ever play the game, pioneer on and off the field for black athletes everywhere. A true legend, without a question.